Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
Hey, you're listening to another episode of
Coaster Kings Radio.
And today's episode is all about planning a trip to China. And instead of doing one trip, we're actually doing like 4 trips.
Yeah.
So this is not a joke.
So this started as a let's talk about our trip to China that we're planning for this spring, and then the trip got bigger and longer and thicker and
more complicated.
Yeah.
And vacation days we're not allowing for all
we are
this.
also going to Japan in the fall. And so we were like, well, this is actually going to be like several trips. There's a few things that are kind of dictating the order of operations for our 4 China trips.
So one big thing to take into account is that as of right now, Dutch passport holders, which is me, do not need a tourist visa to go to China until November. Which previously I've always had to get 1-year Chinese tourist visas, which are okay, but it's kind of a pain to keep going and flying wherever you're going to go to the embassy, get a visa, come back, and do the whole thing. Takes a lot of time. Alex has a longer visa because he has a different passport. So, and this is going to have to be the year of China. However, for those who are visiting and think, oh my god, don't want to deal with getting a tourist visa, China does allow timed entry visas as long as you have confirmed airfare and a confirmed seat out of the country after between 72 and 144 hours. And regions that allow that are obviously the big tier 1 cities like Tianjin, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, or the whole Guangdong province at once. And then there's obviously regions where that's not necessarily a possibility. So now when we're planning our trip, it's like, all right, where can we be for a longer time? And then when the visa waiver for my passport is over, when can we plan smaller trips that stay in the cities that we can get a waiver for? Just for simplicity of visas alone. That's one of the things that we have to look at.
So to take full advantage of Sean's special flexibility for this year, just for this up until November, our most ambitious China components will be taking place on this soonest upcoming China trip. Future China trips, under the assumption that the new no visa requirement for Dutch passports will expire, because it's a test.
Yeah, it's a test.
They're not
it's 6
necessarily...
countries.
Yeah, so
it's Malaysia, Germany, France, Italy, the Netherlands, and Spain. Those 6 countries.
Yeah, and it's like so random. Like, why not Belgium? Poor Belgium. But anyway, so with that in mind, we've decided to really... We want to take on Chengdu and Chongqing for this China trip. We weren't necessarily going to do that this trip. We had looked at Beijing and Nanjing. Ultimately, we decided to cut Beijing, keep Nanjing. Shanghai, of course, is our liaison. But then we really want to take on Chengdu and Chongqing, which those 2 cities are relatively close to each other. Relatively. China is
But
huge.
not close to anything else.
Yeah.
Because they are very far away.
Yeah.
So Chongqing and Chengdu, Sichuan province is Chengdu, and then Chongqing is its own administrative region, city, province. Like, there's only 4 of them, actually. Little lesson here. Shanghai, Beijing, Tianjin, and Chongqing are 4 cities where the city is also the province. So it's the same governing region as where everywhere else you have a governing like province and then the cities within. But for these 4 cities, they're so big that they are the same as a province, but also a city. So anyway, they're called Tier 1 cities in China. And Chengdu and Chongqing are really close to each other, and they are about in the middle, that center pretty much, on the river plateau, the delta of China, which is cool. Like where the Yangtze River meets another really important river that I forgot. That's off my head.
But basically, so in celebration of this current situation with the visas, any of the theme parks that we could easily do on the 5-day transit visa have been pushed to 2025, basically. Because those will be good trips to take if the current visa requirements that are dropped get reinstated next year, basically.
Another thing is to consider is that for the airline I work for and the base I'll be based out of, we do fly both Beijing and Shanghai. So some of the stuff that I could potentially do on a work layover, which I do have a work visa.
Also true.
For this, I also am not as concerned with on a vacation, because vacation I got to use for stuff that I cannot fix into a layover.
Totally true, yeah.
And then one thing I want to add is we're going to talk about 4 trips, and the first 2 trips actually both include things related to the waiver, and then the 2025 trips, the second 2 trips, are related to the 144-hour pass-through waiver. It's a lot of waivers, but that's how I get to play the game.
If we're lucky, they'll just reinstate it, and next year it'll be a no visa, will travel kind of thing, just like how this year is going to be.
Then we can even add even more.
But this year is a real gift, and we don't want to take it for granted, which is why we're going big. Going to Chengdu, going to Chongqing.
So we're going to start with our trip that is coming up this spring. And we're going to be flying in and out of Shanghai, which we have done several times now, so we're quite familiar with that whole
I love
aspect.
the Pudong airport, you guys.
Shanghai, we love Shanghai. Shanghai is very easy. If you're planning a trip to China, you're like, wow, China's overwhelming. We get it. But Shanghai is probably the easiest city in China to do. And not even probably, it's just the easiest city in China to do. It feels really Western in the city itself. You just got to kind of figure out some of the transit, because the transit hours make no sense.
Oh, true.
It's like 10 p.m. on a Friday evening, and you think, okay, great, it's only 10 p.m., but then suddenly everything is shut.
Yeah.
Like, the lights turn off, the skyscrapers just blend with the sky, and good luck finding a metro back to where it's supposed to go.
If New York is the city that never sleeps, Shanghai is the city that goes to bed promptly at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, so Shanghai being our liaison to China, our primary liaison to China, Shanghai Disney is kind of our primary park liaison.
And we do always want to add Shanghai Disney. First of all, Shanghai Disney is a great buffer day. So when you misconnect and you have to go to Shanghai a day later or something, or anything can happen, Shanghai Disney we've done a couple times, so it's great for us to have it as a buffer.
Yeah.
We're like, all right, worst case scenario, we don't get to go to Shanghai Disney, but we've been and we're going to go again. So that's not a big deal.
Or on the other side of the coin, like our last Japan trip,
we got
China trip, excuse me. Our flight was delayed for 10 hours, so we went to Shanghai Disney for a whole day.
Actually, yeah.
A whole day that we were going to be traveling, but instead we were in Shanghai, so we got a bonus Shanghai Disney day by using Shanghai as our travel day. And liaison buffer.
A little bit later on in the episode, we'll discuss why we're pretty much skipping everything in the Shanghai region. First of all, we've done a lot of Shanghai region. So Shanghai borders Zhejiang and Jiangsu provinces. And within there, you have Wuxi, you have Suzhou, you have Changzhou. And so we did China Dinosaur Land. We've done
World Joyland.
We've done Wuxi Sunak. We did
HB World.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've done all those parks. And so they're all relative ease from Shanghai. So therefore, we don't need to do any of those right now because we don't need to. And then some other parks that they've added or some new attractions, we will just add to a later trip. And again, we'll talk about that in a bit. However, Nanjing is in the Jiangsu province. It's the original capital of the People's Republic of China, or just in China in general. I don't know.
Yeah, I think when it was the capital, it was still just China.
Yeah, this is before PRC.
Yeah, we're not exactly.
Yeah, we're not super history buffs here. Just a heads up. But we're going to add in Nanjing, and we're really excited for both the city, but also the parks. They've added some new parks. That's exciting.
Yeah, so the Nanjing area. This is an area that was definitely, when we were there in 2019, this was not really a point of focus yet. So this was not, neither of these parks were open, right? Like, neither of these parks existed.
No, they weren't open at the last trip.
On our last trip. So obviously it wasn't on our radar, and now it is. It's just a little bit further inland from Changsha, which is where we spent several nights on our 2019 trip, because we had our two Changsha parks, China Dinosaur and World Joyland, and then our day trip to Wuxi Sunak, all branching from that area, and then also back towards Shanghai, hitting HB World on the way. And we're mentioning a lot of these parks that we've already been to, and like, we love these parks, but like, we had such good experiences that like, there's no need to revisit these parks right now when there's so much new ground to cover and new coasters to ride. So even though we had a great time at China Dinosaur and Wuxi Sunak, we're like, we're going to leave those where they are so that we can focus on new territory that we are excited to uncover.
And the main park for us in the Nanjing area is the new Happy Valley Nanjing, which for all intents and purposes doesn't look anything like a traditional Happy Valley park. Traditional Happy Valley parks are very sterile, basic, concretey.
They're spread out.
This is a gorgeous park, but it's very condensed. Has 5 roller coasters. One of which is a clone of the wing coaster we're going to ride later in the trip, and hopefully, of course. Everything in China is hopefully.
Is contingent on.
Like, you go to China and you just expect shit to not be open, and if it's open, then it's really great. Anyway, so there's a wing coaster called Forest Predator, and that has the 2 last rows reversed. And this is a clone of the one in Happy Valley Chongqing.
Yeah.
And we're really excited for this one, I think primarily because of the backward seating. It has some cool, near-miss elements. And it's a long layout. It's a long, drawn-out layout.
It's a big, beautiful out-and-back layout, which we love. It seems, to me, it kind of has, that presence of Gatekeeper, the size of Gatekeeper, but it's a little more... It's smaller than Gatekeeper. I think of it as, a cross between Gatekeeper and Wild Eagle at Dollywood. But, yeah, these are great rides, or so it would seem. It's cool that we get to ride the two clones of them just because... by pure incident, because of the way that we are prioritizing Chengdu and Chongqing on this particular trip, where Nanjing was already the focus. I mean, pretty much from the start of planning this trip, aside from Universal Studios Beijing, the focus of this trip was Nanjing and hitting Happy Valley Nanjing. But just because of it has a nice proximity to Shanghai, but it's also not close enough that you can do it on a Shanghai 24-hour layover, per se. So, and there's two parks, and it's
it's not that close to Shanghai. It's a couple hours by train.
It's not like a day trip from Shanghai, but it's convenient.
Because if you want to go to China Dinosaur Land, for example, which is exactly in the middle between Shanghai and Nanjing in Chengzhou, that's a good 3 hours by taxi. It's a good 2 hours by train. It's not... these parks are not close enough to Shanghai. You have to really go out. And Jiangsu is Jiangsu's the province, sorry. Yeah. Nanjing is a really cool city, yeah.
But yeah, so in addition to Forest Predator, the giant B&M wing coaster, I think the signature roller coaster at this park is their custom Intamin LSM multi-launch coaster, Light of Revenge, which is such a cool name. The themed areas in this park, there's a lot of aliens in this park because there's space aliens,
yeah. And then there's forest aliens.
And then forest aliens. So there's different kinds of sci-fi happening.
And then there's a mine train.
There's cottagecore sci-fi and soup future, postmodern sci-fi. I'm already loving the whole premise of this place. But yeah, so Light of Revenge. If you're familiar or have heard about this ride, you might notice that it is a variation on Cheetah Hunt at Busch Gardens Tampa, which I love Cheetah Hunt. But Light of Revenge makes Cheetah Hunt look like a safe family endeavor.
Yeah, it's much more an evolved version of the ride. No mid-course brake runs, smooth elements.
Very fluid.
It's a little less...
The
chunky.
Zero G roll on Light of Revenge is directly underneath the airtime hill following the final launch.
So that's really where shaping is different. Yeah.
So it's really neat the way that not only did they modernize this layout, but they optimized it too, with some of the crossover elements meeting at different points than they would on the Busch Gardens Tampa version. But then in a lot of ways, they're very true to what Busch Gardens Tampa and Intamin developed together. It's got the little zigzag bit on the very farthest end of the ride right before that last launch. I mean, all of the elements are there. The tree... The first launch into the wave, that 270 wave curve, and then dives underground, it's all there. It's just modified. If you've seen what Universal Studios Beijing did with their Incredible Hulk clone, in parentheses, clone, where it's the same ride and the same sequence of elements, but just shaped more fluidly, I guess. That's what they have done with Cheetah Hunt here with Light of Revenge, except maybe even more. Light of Revenge has more airtime hills, and I think it's slightly longer because of the way that it's positioned and the way they accommodated the station. I don't know. It might be marginally longer too. But just those two coasters, the B&M wing coaster and the Intamin LSM coaster are just an amazing double slam dunk and a couple of really cool signature rides for this Happy Valley. And this Happy Valley is we looked it up on Google Earth a couple nights ago, and it's tiny. The park is physically very small, but it is jam packed with just beautiful, thoughtful, colorful, imaginative architecture, rides, placement. It's a huge water park. The water park takes up 60% of the whole operation, and yet the park still has 5 roller coasters and several water rides and lots of flat rides and lots of things to do. I just had Sorry, we're consulting Roller Coaster Database, and okay, thanks. You have it up. So, in addition to the two major coasters, there's also a family boomerang. It's the Rebound layout, which, if you're not familiar, it is like
a big figure eight.
A bow. Yeah, it's a figure eight. Isn't this what Kings Island is getting this year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So we've got that, and then they have a Vekoma family invert, the Dragonflyer at Dollywood layout. I think the one that most people are familiar with, but this layout has been cloned in quite a few places. You can find it all over mainland Europe, Scandinavia, China, and then they have their Mine Train. Oh yeah, the Wilderness Escape. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is a Jinma Golden Horse version copy of the Vekoma. It's kind of funny that this park was built with Vekomas, two Vekomas, and then also a fake Vekoma, and it was all contracted out and built at the same time. I wonder if anyone in Vekoma was kind of like, you guys shouldn't be doing this. Like, this is our ride. This is our layout. Like, you guys are thieves.
And then next up in the Nanjing area is a park I'm personally really excited for, is Dragon Valley Theme Park. Gorgeous park. We covered the construction sort of live on the website a couple years ago because I was just really mesmerized with there's a giant indoor structure, really large, and then there's also a big outdoor park with this gorgeous rockwork that you can explore. It's like a giant walkthrough. The park is home to 3 roller coasters. Dragon Race is a racing Jinma kiddie coaster.
Well, I guess it's 4
decent
because
size. Well,
the kiddie coasters have unique layouts.
Racing, yeah.
And they race. So really 4 credits, potentially.
And then there's a knockoff Skyloop from Beijing Chevrolet Amusement Equipment.
Which we will not be allowed to ride, I don't think.
It's a heavy.
Because we tried to ride this exact model at Sean Lord Holiday Manor, and they were like, absolutely not.
And then the ride we're really going for is Jungle Dragon, which is a Vekoma Shockwave, the 1095 model. And this ride is gorgeously interwoven with the area around it and rockwork, and it's just awesome looking ride, really. We saw a couple POVs of it. It looks really good, and we haven't actually gotten on one of these clones yet, so we're really, really excited to ride it. For anyone that wants reference to what this model is, it's the same as Abyssus, however, it's missing like the first section of the ride where like, it launches you and does kind of like a couple of hops, and then it has the big launch. It doesn't have that small launch and the hops. It's just a standard model, but it looks great, and we're really excited to ride it. And I'm actually really excited to just kind of discover this park because this park has a lot going on, and it's not all roller coaster themed. Not all roller coasters. It's just lots to discover and these indoor realms that they have. So we're excited for this park, obviously as well. And then there's one more thing we're going to do in Jiangsu, and that's also roller coaster themed. And there's a Wanda Mall, which there's Wanda malls everywhere in China.
Yeah, we went to the one next to Wuchi Sunak and just walked around.
Right, and we went to the one in Changzhou near Dinosaur Land like several times, actually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We went to the one next to Guangzhou Sunak Land. I mean, there's Wanda malls literally everywhere.
Yeah.
So there's a Wanda mall also in Nanjing, right, like a kilometer, I think, from the Happy Valley theme park. And that's where they have an indoor version of a Zamperla moto coaster, and that is themed to shipbuilding, and in literal translation is literally shipbuilding coaster.
Shipbuilding workshop
coaster.
And then the
English version is Dry
Dock Express.
And we're just going to see if it's open and hit it. And
so tiny little
probably want to hang out
Wanda Indoor.
Well, I probably want to go to the mall anyway, because we usually do tend to go to Wanda malls when we're near just to grab like some food or some groceries or whatever we want to do, because Wanda malls are great for that. And
they have another coaster.
Oh wow, look at this.
They have, so this is Nafeng Amusement. We have not ridden the roller coaster from Nanfeng. Nanfeng Amusement Rides Company, and it's an indoor enclosed spinning mouse with a custom layout and various dark ride sequences. So that seems really cool. Hopefully, again, it's with the Chinese manufactured rides, it could be like the most benign looking ride ever, but they could still tell you that you're too big or too tall to ride it. So with the Chinese designed rides, there's no guarantees
I will ever get on them. Yeah.
Even on some of the Western designed rides, there's no guarantees based on the fact that like some of the parks just have very strict rules about who they allow on. Dry Dock Express is an authentic Zamperla. There's a lot of knockoff Zamperla moto coasters throughout China. The motorcycle straddle coaster phenomenon, I think, has hit China harder than anywhere else in the world, because it would seem that motorcycle and or straddle coasters are prevalent in just about every region. Every region seems to have at least one motorcycle-type coaster, and we've already ridden several in China. And some of them were quite good, especially Tron. Mostly Tron, but also Dinosaur Mountain.
Dinosaur Mountain, underrated.
At China Dinosaur Park, which is an authentic Zamperla with a lift hill.
That's funny, because I can't even exactly list which episodes, but there's Costa Kings, Catharsis, Part 1 or Part 2.
Cafe Catharsis,
from early in the season, for earlier in the podcast. And then we also have a couple podcasts about, like, most underrated rides. Like, we bring up some of these rides once in a while.
Yeah, we brought up China Dinosaur Park on a few episodes because of what a pleasant surprise that park is. Like, you go for Dinoconda, but you stay for everything else, I must say.
And so now, next up, we're going to go to Chengdu, which will require a plane ride, which there's plenty of those domestically. It's actually one of the busiest airspaces in the world, China. And Chengdu, first things first, what I'm excited for is some non-roller coaster stuff, is the giant Buddha of Lashan is there, which is really cool. It's like built into a rock side right by the river, the Yangtze River. And it's honestly like kind of a place that people really make a pilgrimage for. Like, it's a really cool thing that I want to see. Also, Chengdu is known for, it's the panda bear capital of the world. First of all, they have like a bunch of panda conservation institutions where they breed and keep pandas. So if you see those cute videos of a bunch of little pandas running after like a keeper, that's usually in Chengdu.
So that's really fascinating. You taught me that. I didn't really know.
Yeah, I also had a colleague that I worked with that also lived in Chengdu. But and then last but not least, Chengdu is not just some small city. If you may have not heard of it, it's actually one of the biggest business cities in China. You got Shenzhen, Beijing, Shanghai, Chengdu. It's like 260 out of the 500 Fortune companies are based there. So anyway, that is Chengdu. And Chengdu is also home to a bunch of theme parks. This is in Sichuan, so the kitchen, or the cuisine, the cuisine is Sichuan cuisine, which I think is actually pretty famous because people talk about it all the time.
I think that's what Americans would know the most. If you're wondering, like, what is there to know about Chengdu, it's like, well, it's really the culture center of the Sichuan province. And that is, I think, Americans' understanding of the Sichuan province is the food, and it is spicy. And like hot pot is from this region; it's from this province. Well,
it's
especially famous in Chongqing. Yeah,
which used to be part of Sichuan, and now it's its own thing. Yeah.
But yeah, so Chengdu and Chongqing each have a Happy Valley and a Sunac Land. And the Sunac lands at these areas are not the biggest. They're not as big as Wuxi Sunac or Guangzhou Sunac.
Which are great parks, by the way. Like, I generally, from our experience, highly prefer Sunac lands over Happy Valleys. Like, their operations are better, their parks are nicer.
But the Happy Valleys we've been to are crappy valleys.
Right, but we're going to nicer Happy Valleys.
We're going to the nicer Happy Valleys that are directly competing with Sunac parks, and we hope that is the common thread. Happy Valley in Chengdu, especially, it opened in 2009 with 4 major roller coasters, kind of during the initial
Happy
Valley explosion, the hard launch of turning Happy Valley from just a Shenzhen-based pair or trio of parks to like a countrywide conglomerate of parks, more or less. Like, I think the Six Flags of China would be like the best metaphor here. So Chengdu Happy Valley opened with four major roller coasters in 2009, and then between 2017 and 2018, the park had a huge expansion that brought on 2 more major roller coasters.
Arguably even their biggest coasters.
Yeah, they're 2. I would say they're signature coasters, because the rest of the coasters in the park are production models. I think, yeah. All the coasters from the first round of rides for this park were production models. The park
isn't that pretty, by the way, the first round of the park, but the second round of the park is nicer.
Yeah, I would say that 2009 era Happy Valley, which is really what gave us the aesthetic of this park, and Happy Valley Shanghai, is not the nicest or the prettiest, but they've definitely trended up. And, like, this trip will really highlight that because of our familiarity with the older style of Happy Valley parks, and then now going to 3 new Happy Valley parks, 2 new Happy Valley parks and 1 older Happy Valley park with a new section.
Which is this park.
Which is this park.
So let's dive into the lineup. So we'll start with the Dragon in Clouds, which is a Vekoma, not a knockoff, a Vekoma SLC. And it's the Shenlin model with the bonus helix, which is the Kumali with an extra helix.
Yeah.
So it has your big swooping drop into a vertical loop, into a Cobra roll, to a 0G roll, and it's kind of almost like an inclined loop. It's kind of more of like a helix, so it's not completely inclined. And then another bonus helix at the end of that. Fascinating layout. We rode the one without the helix in Happy Valley Shenzhen. And that was
the OG. That was designed for that park. So, like, this production model, the Kumali production model of the Vekoma SLC is a Happy Valley original.
Yeah, in Shenzhen.
And several of the Happy Valley parks built variations on them. This one just happens to be slightly longer with the extra helix.
And then there is Dragon in Snowfield, a different dragon.
So we have Dragon in Clouds and Dragon in Snowfield.
Dragon in Snowfield, which, can you guess this, is actually a mine train.
Yeah, a
themed to nothing snow-related.
Vekoma.
It's just a real Vekoma mine train, regular layout, same as the one that we find in RCT2,
Calamity
Man.
And it's funny that the Nanjing Happy Valley that is brand new has a Golden Horse knockoff of this layout.
I will say this one is really cool. I mean, again, the name makes absolutely no sense. Like, there's no snow, there's no field, nothing. But there's a snow dragon.
There's no snow, there's no field, and there's no dragon. But it's beautiful.
Unless this is dragon on top of their giant statue. But there's 2 giant towers that combine the lift hills together. And there is 2 giant creatures, which may be dragons, I guess. But they look more like birds, holding up this giant, almost like wreath. It's larger than life, which some of the Happy Valley parks did do that pretty well. Because if you think about Happy Valley, not to go on a tangent, but if you go to Happy Valley Beijing and you think of their Superman flying coaster clone, Crystal Wings that they really built through all the rockworks, there are some projects that they did in their earlier days that really are quite pretty. And this is one of them, actually.
Yeah.
And then I'll do one more coaster and I'll pass it back on to Alex.
Uh-huh.
The other coaster I want to discuss is the Fly Over Mediterranean, which also does not have any sort of Mediterranean vibe whatsoever. In fact, it is the most basic looking ride, but it is a Intamin Megalights, which I've only ridden one because the one in Shanghai was down every visit.
Yeah. There's 2 Happy Valley parks with Intamin Megalights, Shanghai and Chengdu. And I've been to the Shanghai one. We've made 3 separate attempts between the 2 of us at Happy Valley, Shanghai, and the one coaster that evaded us every time is the Megalight. But we've ridden the Megalight at Tobu Zoo, the OG. Tobu Zoo's Megalight is actually the OG, not just because that was the first place it was built, but because the layout of that ride was actually dictated by the footers of the roller coaster that previously operated at Tobu Zoo, and the park wanted to repurpose the footers, so Intamin built a roller coaster that sat on the footers, and that was how we got the layout for the Megalight. So, no more
ready for the next coolest name?
Oh yeah,
Flying Asparus in Western Region. I don't even know what Apsaras is.
Apsaras, it's got to be some kind of bird.
Or something.
Yeah, it's got to be some sort of falcon or something. We call it flying asparagus.
You call it flying asparagus.
But, well, whatever.
To be fair with you, I kind of thought that was what it was called because you always call it
because I call it flying asparagus. And when it was announced for a while, it was labeled as Western Region's Heaven. So that was how it sat on Roller Coaster Database for a couple years, if you're wondering. And this is a custom B&M dive machine, a narrow gauge one.
I want to say something about this coaster real quick before I forget. This is actually the ride where they introduced the suspended loose article bins that we see on Yukon Striker.
And Yukon Striker got all the credit.
Yukon Striker got all the credit, but it was actually, I don't know if B&M obviously or what it is, because it is like a little coaster on the sky. But you put all your loose articles in like a bin, or like in a cubby, and then the cubby gets lifted up into the air over the station via like a little roller coaster track, and then gets deposited again when you come back. Anyway, continue.
But yeah, this looks like a really fun ride. It only has one inversion, despite being pretty lengthy. It's probably the longest of the narrow gauge B&M dive machines. I mean, it is really quite long for a ride of this style. But a custom ride and a really cool looking layout. And it is intertwined. So this roller coaster opened in 2018 as part of, I guess, the final chapter in the expansion for this park. But an earlier phase of this expansion was the Great Desert Rally, which opened the year before in 2017. And that is their very cool-looking GCI wooden coaster, which, among other notable elements, has a fan curve that flying Apsaris has a, like, they hug each other. Like, the ride, it threads this wave turn moment.
I do want to make one quick observation. Is this whole area is themed to like what they call like Western region, but Western region for China is the Middle East.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Western Africa, Western Asia, Northern Africa and stuff.
Yeah.
So just like when you think of Western, I think in the Western world, we always think, oh, Wild Wild West, whatever. But this is all themed to like a big desert in like the Middle East.
It's a big Fata area.
Yeah, totally.
Or a big like Fogel Rock area. Maybe that's what the Apsaris is a big rock bird. And then their smallest roller coaster, the Magic Carpet, it's a Jinma spinning mouse that was already at the park when it opened in 2009, but then was rethemed and incorporated into the new area. It used to just be kind of a racetrack theme, like a basic, and it was called something Mad Rats. And then I think they either relocated it within the park, or that was just like where the expansion... Oh, maybe it was already... I'll have to look into that. But anyways, the ride has been incorporated into the Western regions area of the park and given the Magic Carpet theme. But yeah, so there's 6 full-size roller coasters at this park. No kiddie coaster, no family boomerang or family invert. Their smallest, most family-friendly coasters are the Spinning Wild Mouse and the Vekoma Mine Train. And then just a great lineup of 4 like spectacular e-ticket roller coasters.
And then, speaking of spectacular, our next park in this region is the Sunik Land of Chengdu. And this park is most famous for its near Taron clone. So Taron Phantasialand Intamin roller coaster. This is a clone of it. It's actually technically a little bit taller. Like the highest point of the ride is taller. It is themed a little bit differently. It's themed to like a running bull almost. The literal translation of its name is Extreme Speed, but the logo says All Speed.
Oh, the ride vehicle looks cool.
And the ride vehicle, yeah, it's almost like a steampunky kind of like bull.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the actual theming of the ride, there's like all these rock statues, including like a bear fighting a dragon, I think. I mean, leave it to China. But the ride looks really, really neat, and we're actually quite excited for this, I think. Mostly because I want to kind of see how it feels compared to Taron.
Mm-hmm.
Also, what a crazy layout to be cloning.
I know. A massive, intricate layout, but... We've learned that with the Sunak parks, they'll just buy one of everything.
Sunak Lands, every park has like, it's almost entirely custom rides.
No overlap.
Or custom between like within the chain. Like there's of course the Sunak Land we did in Wuxi that had the custom wind coaster that's practically a hyper.
And
a Blue Fire clone. But then also a custom Zamperla Vector coaster.
Yeah.
So,
and if you find it at a Sunak park, you're not going to find it at any other Sunak park. Like, that's what's crazy. And none of these parks have market overlap. There's no, like, necessity in terms of making all of the parks totally unique. It's just a really wonderful benefit. If you're a roller coaster enthusiast hitting all these parks, we are the benefactors because all of these parks have unique signature roller coasters just because.
And then, as you'll know with the Sunak parks, especially these two, there's not as much to do. So the other rides that really of note here are the Family Thriller, which is a knockoff Vekoma.
It's that same
Mine
layout.
Train coaster, and then there's a Wacky Worm. So let's move on from that because we are already like 35 minutes in.
Well, we're going to be efficient.
Next, we're moving to Chongqing.
But I do want to say it's funny that both of the Chengdu parks have identical mine trains. It's just that one is authentic and one is a ripoff.
True. So I guess it's still kind of different, huh?
Yeah. So yeah, Chongqing. As
we navigate to this on our guide.
So this time we'll keep with the Sunak park. So Chongqing Sunak Land looks like a big, beautiful park, but they just have 2 coasters. No kiddie coaster. But they of course have every park has to have a mine train. Like that seems to be like law. Every park from every Happy Valley, every Sunac, and every Disney seems to need at least one mine train. And so they have their mine train here? No, this is a unique layout. Okay. So at least the Osprey mine train at Chongqing Sunac is a layout that I don't think we've ridden. Right?
I don't think so. No.
I think this is a layout that will be unique to us, but there's quite a few clones of it. Although Roller Coaster Database is saying that it's the Vekoma mine train like knockoff layout.
Huh.
But then pictures of it doesn't look like that at all. This might be mislabeled.
This happened before. We will discover on our own.
Anyway, perhaps arguably the more notable roller coaster at Chongqing Sunac Land is the legendary Twin Dragon, which is a modified clone of Cedar Point's Wicked Twister.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can call it somewhat of a clone. I mean, the ride is much taller, if I'm not mistaken. And the way they did the spikes for this one is, because it's more of a modern coaster, the spikes, the twisting on the spikes get tighter as you go further up, meaning that the spin just gets more intense. So the spinning, it's really like a really pretty ride. The trains, I think, are my favorite because they have dragons, dragon heads on both sides of trains. In both directions, looks like the trains are, dragons flying through the air. And yeah, they do have lap bars, which is really neat. Yeah.
And it's 4 meters taller than Wicked Twister. Because the Wicked Twister is 66 meters tall, or was, and Legendary Twin Dragon is 70. So this thing is like slightly taller. If you picture Wicked Twister, this is like slightly taller and slightly longer. But yeah, so Chongqing Sunac Land, probably with just the 2 coasters, we'll take in some of the sights. I'm curious to see. Sunac parks are usually good for like a nice flying theater or a good dark ride or an interesting water ride. So I'm curious to see what surprises are in store for us at Chongqing Sunac Land. Because as far as roller coasters go, there's not a whole lot of substance here compared to the other parks on our tour.
So Happy Valley in Chongqing, which is fun, is actually an actual valley. Like you enter the park.
This is a real valley.
You go down like some escalators, and then you have the whole park. This park is home to 4 roller coasters, mostly really nice roller coasters, actually. Family Coaster is a family boomerang from Vekoma, the 185-meter model. I don't know if I have ridden one of these. It's like the Ben 10 model. What is it, Rebound? This one just says 185 meters.
So Ben 10, like the one at Drayton Manor.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And then we have, but the coaster I'm probably most excited for is Flying Wing Coaster. Really original name for once.
Even though we will have already ridden a clone of this at. Oh no! Are we going to Nanjing first or the
Nanjing first?
Yeah, so we will have just ridden a clone of this, the newer version.
We may or may not. Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, we're going to be riding these clones within a few days of each other.
So yeah, for those who already forgot what the layout is like, for mentioning it earlier, it has the half loop, vertical loop, 0G roll, or more like an elevated kind of corkscrew
and like a big
roll.
Camelback hump.
Big Camelback hump, and then it has an actual 0G roll, and then it has a big turnaround, and it has one of those flat inline twists. Great layout. This is the first one we ever saw that had this. And the colors of this coaster are like wild. Like it's like neon everything, which is kind of cool. We'll see how faded it is by the time we get there.
Okay, so this park definitely has the Vekoma Mine Train
layout. Yeah, I was about to get to that. So the Monte Carlo track, which the name doesn't make a lot of sense, but Happy Valley loves using that name. Because the Wuhan Park has a Vekoma Mine Train called Monte Carlo.
It's actually themed to cars.
That's actually themed to cars. But yeah, they have a knockoff from Jinma, if I'm not mistaken, here as well, a Monte Carlo track. And then they have a really gorgeous terrain wooden coaster called Jerome's Wooden Dragon. Wonder who Jerome is? I mean, look at the park's layout. Look at like the little picture of the ride entrance that shows like some little like airplane. I don't know if the airplane is Jerome, but who knows?
It was called Jungle Dragon when it was announced.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know when the Jerome Dragon...
I don't know who Jerome is.
The Jerome Dragon thing... Yeah, it doesn't say here when it changed, but yeah, it used to be Jungle Dragon. Anyway, great terrain wooden coaster. Like, just moves from layer to layer to layer from the mountain or the hill that it's on. If not the wing coaster, then this must be my favorite. Or
like the Happy Valley Chengdu GCI looks really good, but this one, I think, takes the cake. It is a true terrain ride, and it's just massive. So I'm really excited. That's the coaster I'm the most excited about at this particular park.
And so that completes
That's Chongqing.
our loop of all the parks we're probably going to be doing on that first trip. Because, of course, in Chongqing, we also want to go downtown. I mean, Chongqing is the fastest growing city in China. They currently have, I think, 50 million people living there. It was 5 million.
Chongqing is so incredible, you guys. It's like going to be... It's the city of the future. It's the fastest growing city in the world.
I don't know if it's in the world, because I think there may be some cities in India growing faster. But
I know we've talked about this before. I really think that we looked it up, and it was like the fastest growing. Because this city was virtually non-existent. Like 30 years ago, it was almost nothing. And what's cool about it is how much of the city has been built so recently. It's very efficient. It's like an architect and civil engineer's dream.
And lots of nature nearby, which is really cool. It's like on this plateau where like the three rivers meet. Yeah, really cool. So we're excited for that, and they have like a couple of famous things. They have like the monorails that go through the apartment building. Like their monorail system is really cool.
Yeah,
and they have the sky cars that go over the water. And
it just seems like everything.
Since the city is so steep in the hills, like where the water is, the city at night is lights up with all these like little lights, and it's really just like almost pasted on the side.
It just seems like
of
everything was designed at the same time.
Well, I mean, not quite. I mean, the old city is right there in the middle.
Yeah, but the modern stuff is all so like.
I mean, all China's like that. I think.
But like Chongqing especially.
So that concludes our first trip.
So that's the May trip.
That is the trip of the spring. Then in September, we're going to Japan. And then we'll also do Hong Kong because we have family there and we need to go back and do Frozen at Hong Kong Disneyland.
Yes.
And funny enough, like we go to Disney so much, and all the Disney parks, but I spend the least time at Hong Kong Disney.
Yes.
I was home for like half a day there. And so like I'm dying to go back. I feel like I'm more excited to go back to that park than any other Disney park right now. And then we are also going to go to Ocean Park again, see the state of affairs there. Because last time I went was the day after a typhoon blew through. And so there was damage everywhere and not all the rides were open. So I'm missing Hair Racer. We gotta do that. We gotta go see some family. I mean, I do like Hong Kong a lot. And then we're going to pop the border to Zhuhai, which is right across the border. And in fact, the world's longest bridge is the Zhuhai, Macau, Hong Kong Bridge. And that connects Zhuhai, Macau, and Hong Kong. And so Zhuhai is part of mainland China. So it's part of the Guangdong province. So you do need to have like a tourist visa to go in. And because of the waiver, we can just take the bus over the border and we should be able to just go to Chamlang Ocean Kingdom, which has been mentioned many times before.
This is really one of the only parks that we're like, we need to revisit this.
Yeah, like Chamlang Ocean Kingdom is really high up there for us. And they just opened their second gate, the Chamlang Spaceship, which is home to like a bunch of really cool aquarium exhibits, the world's largest acrylic aquarium wall, which is home to a pod of killer whales, which may or may not have been caught in Russia like 10 years ago. But
we talked about them a little bit in our last episode actually.
So, anywho, like, don't hate us, but anyway, so that is our plan for our trip this fall. Our Japan details I haven't quite figured out. We want to do Fantasy Springs.
We have the positioning of Japan in September is anchored a lot by Fantasy Springs, and also
our brother going too.
Sean's brother, my brother-in-law James is coming with us, and September is historically like one of the nicest times of year to go to Japan. Springtime in Japan is a little crazy with like the cherry blossoms and stuff.
Let's hope the rain is fine.
Yeah, for us, Japan is a little bit more tentative. Really, all the mainland China and Hong Kong stuff of these trips are what we fleshed out. Because we fleshed them out and then decided, like,
it's even completely possible that we change Japan again because we need to fit more into our September trip before I need, other visa forms.
There's another park that we could potentially do in Zhuhai if we were so inclined. Mysterious Island is it predates a lot of the... What?
So what is it?
Listen, you. Mysterious Island predates a lot of the like modern Chinese theme park boom. The park opened in 2005. It has one of the only Intamin accelerator coasters. So they have a hydraulically launched Intamin coaster here, an orange one with like an accelerator-looking top hat and a vertical loop. And then they also have Man of War, which is the last operating SNS Screamin' Squirrel. On the one hand, this park seems like it would be an obvious like highlight. But on the other hand, like There's no guarantees. Like, I don't know. I don't hear of this park much. I don't hear of people going here. And both of their roller coasters are almost 20 years old. And I guess it just seems like the kind of place where you could roll in there and, like, everything would be closed. So it's on the radar, but, like, we need to research this one.
And if we're going to have more time, I'll probably rather go to Macau and do a...
Also,
I want to stay at Studio City quite well. They have a really cool water park, too.
Yes.
And we did go by Macau last time. We actually
we drove by it in a taxi.
Into Macau, yeah.
It was beautiful.
And then our trip after that, if we're ready to jump to the next trip.
Okay, so now we're in 2025. So we have done
2025, or if we're lucky, even like later this year, if we could back-to-back these trips, like go and go.
Sean's ready to go hard.
I'm ready to. Every month. Go to Asia. Ready to go hard. We used to go to Asia so much, guys. Like I miss it. And being in Orlando and working from New York to Europe makes it all a lot harder. But hopefully, being on the West Coast for a little bit for work will make this an easy endeavor. Anywho, so in spring 2025, assuming that that's the timeline, we're going to return to China again. It's every 6 months, kind of the plan. And at this point, I will probably need a transit visa. So back to the beginning of the episode, China allows a 72 to 144-hour transit visas in which you can stay in a certain region, either just a city or in a couple provinces or just a province. And then you have 144 hours, and then you have to vacate the country. And in order to get this little visa upon arrival, so you land there, and upon arrival you get it at like a booth. You then need to show them your confirmed ticket out and have confirmed seats. If anyone ever wants to go and doesn't want to deal with the whole visa process, you can do it upon arrival as long as you have a confirmed ticket to a third country. So for us, we're going to do that by flying almost like westward from the U.S. and then stopping along the way. So our first stop will be Seoul, then we're going to go to Beijing for a couple days, and then we're going to continue on to Singapore and then come back to the States. We really wanted to do Universal Studios Beijing and Universal Studios Singapore, preferably even this year, especially I wanted that, because I really wanted to do all the Universal parks in the world in like the same year. This sounds kind of fun. We did have a Disney before in 9 months, and I kind of want to do it with Universal, but it may be easier for us to do that next year.
Yeah,
like doing it
Beijing,
like this.
Because of how relatively easy it is to hit Beijing, either on a work layover for you or during the transit visa era, we've decided to move that to next year, just in case you have to switch to transit visas for our 2025 endeavors. So Beijing was ousted in favor of Chengdu and Chongqing. Also, this isn't really the best year to go to Happy Valley, Beijing, because of the Thrust Air 3000 incident at Happy Valley Shenzhen. All of the Chinese Thrust Air coasters are closed, which include 3 Happy Valley coasters and like 3 or 4 other ones in other parks, which is a pity. Extreme Rusher at Happy Valley Beijing would definitely be like
that was like the
highlight, like by far. It's really the only major coaster there, except for the little Junior B&M Hypercoaster that is like a unique custom ride. So that was like gonna be a bummer. Would we still go if we were doing Beijing this year? Yeah. But it just would have been kind of a damper, and it's like, well, if there's a better chance of riding it, like there's no chance of riding it this year, which is less of a chance than next year. So maybe next year.
Yeah, and even though we're excited for Universal Beijing, it doesn't call us as much as some other parks around the world.
True.
Absolutely no hates, but we know some people have been and they weren't super enthusiastic about it. And Jurassic World, the dark ride, is really like my number one thing there. But other than that, the layout is. The lineup is not really all that. It's not like they added a bunch of unique attractions. At the end of the day, we've got a Ho Clone ish. You've got Transformers. You've got your Wizarding World. You've got your Water World, and that's all really cool. And I love pretty much all those things. They are also like very close to us in different parts of the world. And we're also going to go back to USJ this year in Japan probably. So we thought it was fine moving Beijing. First, I was like, Beijing needs to be the plan. That's going to be the number one reason to go back to China this year. And I really think we cooled down on that a little bit and say, you know what, we can wait with Beijing, and we can do that in like a year later or 6 months later. So that's kind of it for Beijing. And in Singapore, I really just want to go to University of Singapore and do the Singapore thing, like the what is it, the Skytree Forest, whatever.
Yes.
You know, and then the Marina Sands. I want to just do some of the typical stuff, and then I kind of want to just stay at Resorts World, which the Universal Studios Singapore is not actually owned by
It's not
owned or
owned by
operated
Yeah.
by Universal. It's actually owned and operated by Resorts World or Genting
Genting
Group.
Or Genting Group.
Whatever you pronounce it.
I don't know how it's pronounced, actually. But yeah, so the way that doing this Beijing trip is obviously using Singapore as an out for our Beijing is strategic because we would love to be able to hit those two Universal parks on the same trip. And then Korea is definitely, like, we almost went to Korea this year.
Yeah, we almost went last year in October.
Yeah.
Or the year before.
We have
almost
a
went last
Korea
year.
trip that we've been sitting on for a while. It seems like a great time to go to Korea because, well, I guess right now it's not because T-Express is being retracked. But yeah, next year will be a great time to go to Korea to check out the new. It's RMC, right? They're doing the steel partial, like a hybrid retrack using that.
And then they've got
weird name.
Then they've got the new park in Busan that opened. Of course, there's Lottie World.
Yeah.
There is Everland, like we just mentioned. There is Gyeonggu. What's that pronounced? Gyeonggu World.
Gyeonggu World with the two nice B&Ms.
Yeah, which Python is actually quite high on my list of B&M inverts. It's kind of like that weird era of Silver Bullet and Python being designed together. Like, it's really quirky but really cool B&M invert. But that all requires a little more time, so it'll be easier for us to do it combined with like a couple days Seoul, quick I don't want to say hit and run, it sounds bad. A quick go in and out to Beijing and just like do a couple days there, explore the Great Wall, explore the Forbidden City, do downtown for a little bit, and then half the Happy Valley, full day Universal, on to Singapore. And so we're looking forward to that. That's probably for next spring. And then next fall will either be a return to Seoul or maybe somewhere else in Asia, or go straight to Shanghai and then move on back to Japan for a little bit. Or we need to at least have like a third station again because you need to have a confirmed ticket to a third country.
Yeah.
So we're going to go somewhere else in Asia. As of right now, we have Seoul for that as well. But it could very well be Hong Kong. It could very well be Japan. We don't exactly know yet. Maybe even Vietnam.
Oh, I would love to go to Vietnam.
But somewhere in the region we're going to go. And then we're going to go back to Shanghai for a longer Shanghai trip. And for the Shanghai 144-hour transit visa, you can also go to the Zhejiang and the Jiangsu provinces, which are lined up with that. So Jiangsu, again, is home to like where we've been before, Wuxi, Changzhou, Suzhou, Nanjing. And then Zhejiang is home to Ningbo. And Ningbo, if Alexander's ready for this.
So, Ningbo has a Fanta Wild resort with two full-sized amusement parks. The first park, let's see, this is the second. The newer park is called Glorious Orient,
which is war-themed.
Oriental Heritage opened in 2016, and like the Oriental Heritage parks, a lot of them, they're kind of like the opposite of what the Sunak parks did. These parks are almost identical, like the whole park. Like the whole park is like a drag and drop, like cookie cutter thing. So like, it's kind of like once you've been to one of the Oriental Heritage parks, you've been to all of them. And the one in Ningbo is by far the easiest to access. All of the Oriental Heritage parks essentially have the same lineup of rides, including a Martin and Vlemix wooden coaster called Jungle Trailblazer, which uses the gravity craft trains. I think there might actually be two variations of this layout, but at least half of them are this layout with a barrel roll in the middle, which is pretty cool. The layout to me reminds me a lot of Cuchulainn at Emerald Park in Ireland, if you're wondering, if you're imagining a similar coaster out west. And then they have, excuse me, you guessed it, they have a Vekoma Mine Train 2 double lift hill layout, a knockoff, a Golden Horse knockoff, of course. And then they have an actual Vekoma Boomerang, a modern Vekoma Boomerang called the Stress Express.
I love that name.
Excuse me. So yeah, I'm pretty sure all of the Oriental Heritage Parks have those three coasters, with very little variation, aside from the two versions of the Jungle Trailblazer layout. And I do think it's funny that like Vekoma Boomerangs are being built from the ground up to the original specifications, like the original 1980s, early 1980 specifications. The only difference is that they are outfitted with MK1212s right out the gate, and then there's probably some other technical quirks too. It's interesting that the ones here in China are not built with the Cobra Roll catwalk. They are not worried about the train saddling in the Cobra Roll, which I guess would be par for the course for China. The new gate next door
is the Fenza Park Glorious Orient, which again is war themed. And I've had some friends go, and they said that the themes of everything is very dark, and it's very much like, wow, China won all these wars, which is a unique theme for a park for sure. So I'm kind of excited for that. And apparently there's a Spider-Man kind of dark ride, which we have done previously in China before, and I heard incredible great praise about this ride. In fact, the ride is very long, and so at one point you go through the station again. But there's like sails that lower on the side, so you don't realize you're going through the station. And then all the scenes are different the second time around. So the screens are all changed. So really, really high praise. Apparently it's one of the best dark rides in the world. So actually, I'm excited for that. I don't exactly know its name, but we're going to stumble upon it.
Yeah.
So if I'm not mistaken, it's in the giant ship that is coming out of like a hangar kind of show building.
And then like coaster-wise, it's...
The most important thing for me...
Yes.
Is the fighter jet roller coaster, which is the Vekoma Top Gun coaster, which, I mean, if anyone's seen videos of it, it's just a super cool model. It has, especially the first element, like some wild top hat situation. And I have a hard time even describing, but Benjamin Blumendahl is the one that designed it from Vekoma, and he's a genius with the new stuff. So we're really excited for that.
The theming is incredible. I mean, you literally take off on what appears to be like a pretty sizable... replication of an aircraft carrier, and the trains are 8 passengers. They're two 4-passenger cars, just like half of what like a Shockwave Vekoma train would be, or like a
very very small compared to the layout.
Or Phoenix at Far Up Summerland, like which are I think all 16-passenger trains. And 6 of these have been contracted, and they're all for the other Glorious Orient Fanta Wild parks. So, like, they're kind of... There's a theme here. Like, these Fanta Wild parks love just plopping down the exact same thing. But, you could do a lot worse. If you're going to build 6 of the same roller coaster, it might as well be a next-gen Vekoma launch coaster. The rest of the park has 4 coasters. Only 3 of them we could technically ride because the parent-child coaster is literally one of those bicycle-powered kiddie coasters. Like, I think Gerstlauer builds a version of this. This version...
Yeah, Belantis is one, I think.
Yeah, this thing, it looks even smaller than that. This looks like it was built in someone's garage. And then they have a Wacky Worm Tech coaster and then the Vekoma, the figure 8... Family Boomerang again.
That one's called Frontline Charge, which again is war themed, like the Frontline Charge.
It's just so. Wow.
It's very wild.
Wow, for a kiddie coaster. Kiddie coaster.
So those parks are then. Those 2 parks are the Ningbo parks that we're really interested in.
And then, and another reason why we're pushing this to 2025 is because Sunak Cultural Tourism City, which is only 30 kilometers away from this 2-park Fanta Wild Resort. Formerly, the Six Flags China project will be opening, theoretically, sometime this year. And they have 4 roller coasters. A Mack Hypercoaster with a drop of 60 meters and a maximum speed of 108 kilometers per hour.
That's good.
A Power Splash, a Jinma Kiddie Coaster, and the giant Mauer spinning coaster.
Isn't that the clone of Now You See
Me?
Yep,
it is the clone of the Now You See Me coaster at Motion Gate, Dubai.
So we're really excited for those.
Those are 3 fabulous parks.
And then in the Jiangsu area itself, we want to go to Suzhou again. With Suzhou, first of all, I want to go to the city of Suzhou because that's what used to be the Venice of the East.
Yeah.
Which is just a really cool big old canal system. But then with different architecture, I suppose. And they have Suzhou Forest World there, which has a Jinma Rides tilt coaster.
Yeah.
First of all, which we may be able to ride, may not be able to ride. We'll see. And then they have the brand new Mack Rides Hurricane.
Yeah, is it called Hurricane or Havoc in Heaven or something? Like
Havoc in Heaven is a dark ride.
Okay.
Oh my God! Please hold. I think it's Hurricane. Well, anyway, so I'm going to talk about what the ride is. So the ride is the fastest, I think, Mac launch coaster in the world with a giant top hat, followed by some airtime hills, some low-to-the-ground inversions.
Beyond the Cloud is what it is called.
Beyond the Cloud is the name of it now.
And it is a 130 mile per hour launch Mac coaster. The top hat is giving accelerator. It's
like one of the biggest things Mac's ever done.
And it's definitely of that caliber. You may have seen this.
Does it have the fastest inversion in the world now?
It might, because it does
crazy
haul
barrel
ass
roll
through a barrel roll at the bottom of this 200-foot top hat.
Like it comes out of a top hat, 200 foot, and it has low to the ground barrel roll. It's crazy.
And the Cobra roll of this ride threads the vertical loop that it follows immediately after. Just a beautiful collection of elements.
And that's and then Suzhou. So Suzhou is really close to Shanghai.
We were right by this area, but this park wasn't open yet in 2019. When we were there, Wuchi Sunak Land, which is only is just 24 kilometers away from this park. That's where we went because that was open and brand new. But I remember talking about Suzhou Amusement Land. It has the official name is Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World. And we were talking about this park in 2019, being like, oh, we're going to come back and we have to hit this park because they're building a Golden Horse tilt coaster. And apparently the Golden Horse tilt coaster is not bad. It opened with rigid shoulder harness trains, and then they were replaced with vest restraints after customer feedback, which is a fascinating turn of events, especially for a park in Japan.
China.
Or in China.
And again, since we'll only have about 5 days with the transit visa here, it'll be kind of what we'll be able to fit in. We'll just be those 4 or 5 parks, and maybe Shanghai Disney, and then bounce again. So that's kind of what maybe our next 2 years will look like. So I think our biggest trips really are all going to be China involving. However, that doesn't mean we're not going to go to Europe, because the nice thing about Europe is it's just so easy to do without needing to plan vacation ahead. We can we can just suddenly have a week off and be like, oh, great, let's go and hit Spain, or let's hit France, or let's hit Germany, the Netherlands, whatever. That's kind of easy. So I do expect us to go on a couple of Europe trips as well. But the big, plan ahead, far away, got to get it all done ahead of time kind of trips, especially for China, are really, if anyone plans on going, especially if you're going to leave Shanghai or, leave a big city and you're going to go out there and you're going to do stuff that isn't, right there in the western nice parts of China, definitely plan ahead. Have your Alipay accounts ready to go. Have your hotels in Mandarin and in English printed out. You're going to have everything ready to go, because China,
and a lot of China, you might want Cantonese too.
Yeah, you may want to back up some Cantonese into there.
You're going to Guangzhou.
Because you're going to get to parts of China where nobody speaks English. Your internet is completely blocked by the Chinese internet. They won't let you use it. You got to get VPN apps. We have a whole article on what to do when you go to China. Definitely recommend very much preparing yourself. If you do have questions, you can always reach out to us on any of our social media platforms or anywhere else you find us, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, anywhere. And that is kind of our general China plan. I may change a little bit, but that's I think we're, at least I am confident that this is the way.
It'll be fun to listen back to this
and see how much it changed.
November 2025. We need to pull this episode up and be like, these idiots had no idea what was going to happen.
No. I like to believe. Last time we went to China and we did a lot of stuff that was not in the general vicinity of big cities. We were successful. We had it down.
We even added 2 parks to our itinerary on the fly. So pretty cool.
I think we have China down, but post-pandemic, who knows? Who knows what it's like? But yeah, my name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And we appreciate you listening. We'll catch you guys on another Coast Kings Radio episode soon. Bye.
Can't believe we kept it almost under an hour.